The Voice Beneath the Floorboards, a horror bedtime story in 50 parts. Section 1. The house at the end of Larchwood Road. You never intended to move so far out of the city. But when the listing popped up, 3-bedroom farmhouse, isolated hillside, priced absurdly low, it felt like fate stepping in. After years of honking horns and sirens outside your window, the idea of silence was tempting. Too tempting. The house sat alone at the end of a cracked, tree-lined road called Larchwood, though the larches had long since died and twisted into leafless specters. The paint was peeling in strips like old skin, and the porch leaned slightly, as though the house had been sighing for years. But inside, it was better than you'd expected. Dusty, yes. Empty, yes. But there was something cozy buried in the bones of it. Like the house had been waiting, politely, for someone to return. The real estate agent was in a rush to leave. Her hand trembled when she handed you the keys. "You'll love it here," she said, too quickly. "Just mind the floors. They creak a bit." Creak wasn't the right word. They groaned, long, aching moans that echoed late at night. That first evening, you unpacked a few essentials. Bedding, a lamp, some books. The light outside faded fast. No streetlights, no hum of distant cars. Just whined through branches and the distant, rhythmic chirp of crickets. Inside, the house sighed with every step you took. Felt like someone else was walking just 1 second behind you. But you told yourself it was nothing, just old wood. You went to sleep early that night, lulled by the silence. But something woke you at 3:11 a.m. sharp. Not a bang, not a scream, just a breath. Long, hollow, and not your own. It came from directly beneath your bed. Section 2. Beneath the boards you didn't move. Not at first. The breath had been too real. Moist, warm, impossibly close. You stared up at the cracked ceiling, willing yourself to believe it was a dream, that the cold air brushing your ankle wasn't fingers curling up from below. But you couldn't ignore it forever. You flung the blanket aside and swung your legs over the edge. Floorboards creaked in protest beneath your bare feet. "Hello?" You whispered. Foolish, maybe, but silence felt worse. The breath didn't return. But a low creak answered you, slow and deliberate, like something shifting under the house. You knelt and lifted the edge of the rug. Beneath it, the old floor was rough and dark with age. You pressed your ear to the wood. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, "Don't leave me here." You jerked back, heart hammering. The voice was soft and breathy, like someone buried in sand, struggling to speak. It was a child's voice, or perhaps something mimicking one. You told yourself it was a pipe. Avant, a hallucination, but curiosity was a sharper tool than fear. You retrieved a flashlight, pressed it against the cracks, and peered inside. Dust swirled below. Nothing moved, but the air was colder there, heavier. That night, you barely slept. You left the light on and watched the floor, waiting, listening. At 3:11 a.m. the next night, the voice returned. "It's cold down here." Section 3. First dig, you didn't want to believe it, but something inside you needed to know. By daylight, the house felt innocent again. The floor was just wood. The whispers, if they were real, had no power under the sun. So you pried up a board. The nails came loose easier than expected, like the house wanted to help. The plank creaked as you pulled it free, exposing a narrow crawl space beneath the floor. Dirt, webs, darkness, and a smell. Damp, musty, wrong. You lowered your flashlight. The beam quivered as your hand shook. Nothing moved.
No rats. No bones.
Just uneven dirt and an old, rusted lantern lying on its side. You reached in and pulled the lantern out. It was ice cold. Inside it, a single fingernail. Tiny, curved, human. You dropped it instantly. Then came the voice, louder this time, close to your ear. "I remember you." You scrambled back, slammed the board down. You didn't fix it, you just placed it there like covering a grave. That night, you locked your bedroom door. It didn't help, because at exactly 3:11 a.m., something knocked. Not at the door, under the bed. "Let me out." Section 4. The tape recorder the next morning, you decided to catch the voice in the act, either to prove you weren't crazy, or that you were. You dug through an old box and pulled out your dad's battered tape recorder. Heavy, clunky, and still functional. You placed it under the bed right before midnight, hit record, and crawled under the covers. Sleep didn't come, but the voice did. Are you listening? You stared wide-eyed at the ceiling, afraid to move. The voice sounded more real than ever, wet whispering too close. You left me here. You let them bury me. You didn't reply. The voice whispered your name. When morning came, you snatched the recorder and hit rewind. The tape whirred back, crackled, then hissed to life. Silence. A few creaks. Then, are you listening? The voice was there, real, on tape. You weren't imagining it. You weren't alone. Section 5. The photo in the wall, you couldn't stop thinking about what the voice had said. You let them bury me. You didn't know who they were, or what. But if something had been buried here, maybe there was more hidden in the house. You started checking the walls. It was in the hallway, behind a loose panel beside the staircase. You pried it free and found a shallow recess in the wall, dark and cobwebbed. And inside it, a photograph. It was black and white, faded. A little girl, no older than 7, standing barefoot on the porch. Her eyes were smudged with shadow. Someone had scribbled her name on the back. Emily, 1937. You turned it over again. This time, something new was written in faint pencil beside her feet. Still here. You dropped the photo. Your hands were shaking. From somewhere beneath the floorboards, you heard a soft giggle. Section 6. The whispering walls the next morning. The sun barely pierced the grime on the windows, casting gray shadows across the peeling wallpaper. The house felt heavier today, as if the walls themselves carried secrets too burdensome to share. You couldn't shake the feeling that the voice beneath the floorboards had followed you up the stairs. You poured a cup of coffee, the steam curling like ghostly fingers in the cold air. The house groaned, something shifting in its bones. You pressed your palm against the wall nearest the bedroom, feeling a faint vibration, almost like a heartbeat. "Hello?" You whispered, voice trembling. No answer. But then, faint, barely audible, came a sigh, like breath escaping a cracked mirror. Goosebumps rose along your arms. Determined to understand, you traced your fingers over a loose section of wallpaper. Your nails scraped the wall gently until it gave way, revealing faded, handwritten notes in shaky script. "They won't let me go. The floorboards hide the truth. Find the light beneath the dark." You shivered, both from the chill and the implication. Someone had been here, trapped, or at least desperate to warn whoever found this house. Just then, the door creaked open behind you. You spun, heart pounding. "Who's there?" You called out. No one. Just the empty hallway stretching into shadow. You swallowed hard and decided. Tonight, you would stay awake and listen. Section 7. Midnight vigil, the clock ticked toward 3. 11 a.m., the moment the house seemed to awaken. You sat rigid in the living room, flashlight clenched in one hand, an old, cracked Bible resting on your lap, a talisman against the unknown. The silence thickened, then soft at first, a scraping sound. Slow and deliberate, something moved beneath the floor. A faint whisper emerged. "Help me?" Your breath caught. The air grew icy, making your skin prickle. You leaned forward, flashlight beam dancing across the floorboards. Suddenly, the floor groaned, and a crack appeared, thin but spreading fast. Dust and a faint, earthy scent wafted up. From the crack, a small hand emerged, pale, trembling, almost translucent. "Please," a voice whispered, closer now. "Free me." Your mind screamed to pull away, but your heart urged you to reach out. With trembling fingers, you lifted the board fully, revealing a narrow hole descending into darkness. From its depths came the soft sobbing of a child. "Who are you?" you whispered. Silence, then a whisper, a name forgotten, a promise broken. The hole seemed to breathe, inviting you in. Section 8. The forgotten name days passed in a haze of uneasy sleep and restless days. You scoured the town library, piecing together the house's history. Rumors of a child vanished decades ago, a tragedy buried beneath the weight of silence. An old newspaper clipping revealed her name, Evelyn Clark. She was 6 when she disappeared, the daughter of the first owner. Her body was never found. You clutched the clipping in your hands. The voice, the nails, the whispering walls. It all pointed to her. That night, you returned home clutching a small music box you'd found in a dusty antique store. Its tune was sweet but haunting. At exactly 3:11 a.m., you wound the box. The soft melody filled the room, mingling with a gentle voice singing along. Faint, trembling, childlike. "Evelyn," you said softly, "I'm here. I won't forget you." A chill ran down your spine, and for the first time, the house seemed to exhale. Not with menace, but with relief. Section 9. The locked chest in the attic. Beneath a thick layer of dust and cobwebs, you found an old chest locked tight with rusted hinges. Inside, faded letters tied with a brittle ribbon, a small doll missing an eye, and a diary. The diary belonged to Evelyn's mother. Its pages told a story of despair. A husband who grew cruel, a child hidden away in the crawlspace beneath the floorboards to keep her safe. "Tonight, I will not let them take her," one entry read. Your hands trembled as you realized the voice wasn't just a ghost. It was a cry for justice. Suddenly, footsteps echoed above the attic, but the house was empty. "Who's there?" you demanded. Only silence answered. Section 10. Shadows in the mirror that night. The mirror in your bedroom reflected more than your own tired face. Flickering in the glass were shadowy figures, twisted, barely visible shapes that shifted and swirled. You rubbed your eyes, but when you looked again, the figures were clearer. Children, playing silently, their faces pale and eyes empty. A voice drifted from the mirror's surface. "Find the light, find the truth." Suddenly, your reflection smiled back at you, a smile not your own. Your heart pounded as the room plunged into darkness. The whisper beneath the floorboards was no longer alone. Section 11. The secret passage the next morning. Armed with the diary and a growing sense of urgency, you explored the house with fresh eyes. Near the fireplace in the living room, your fingers traced the carved wooden mantel until your hands slipped into a hidden latch. With a quiet click, a panel slid open, revealing a narrow, dust-choked passage descending into shadow. The air was thick with age and secrets. You grabbed your flashlight and stepped inside, each footfall stirring decades of forgotten dust. The passage was tight and winding, cold stone walls closing in like a tomb. Halfway down, you stopped at a faded drawing scrawled on the wall. A child's crude sketch of a smiling girl holding hands with a shadowed figure. The passage ended at a heavy iron door, its surface corroded with rust. You pressed your ear against it and heard faint, muffled sobbing on the other side. "Evelyn?" You whispered. No answer, only the sound of chains dragging. Section 12. Chains and whispers. You searched the house for tools, returning with a crowbar trembling in your grip. The iron door gave way with a groan, revealing a small cellar, barely lit by your flashlight. Inside were rusty shackles hanging from the stone walls, and a wooden cot covered in dust and old bloodstains. A chill wind swept through the space, and from the shadows, a voice whispered, "Help me, please!" You scanned the cellar floor and saw fresh footprints in the dust, impossibly small, leading toward a loose stone in the corner. Heart racing, you knelt and pried the stone loose, revealing a narrow tunnel descending further into darkness. "Hold on, Evelyn," you said softly, preparing to follow. Section 13. The crawlspace depths. The tunnel was claustrophobic, squeezing you into silence except for your ragged breaths and the scrape of stone against skin. At the end, you found a tiny room, barely big enough to sit in. Scattered around were children's toys, broken and covered in dirt. On the wall, a message scratched deep. "I'm here. Don't forget me." A soft sobbing filled the air. You knelt, reaching into the shadows, your hand trembling as it brushed cold fingers. "Evelyn," you whispered, voice breaking. A warmth spread through you, a connection across time. Section 14. The mother's letter back upstairs. You pored over the diary, finding a hidden envelope sealed with wax. Inside was a letter from Evelyn's mother. "To whoever finds this, my daughter is alive, hidden beneath this house by a man who sought to do her harm. Please, bring her to light." Tears blurred the words. Suddenly, the house groaned, a low, angry sound. "Not yet," a voice growled from the shadows. "She stays with me." Section 15. The shadow man, a dark figure, appeared in the doorway, tall, twisted, eyes like burning coals. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed. "Leave before the darkness claims you too." You stood your ground, clutching the diary. "Evelyn is coming home," you said, voice steady. The figure lunged, vanishing into smoke. The house trembled, doors slamming shut, but you felt a surge of courage. Section 16. Light in the darkness, you lit every candle you could find, the flickering flames pushing back the shadows. The voice beneath the floorboards grew louder, stronger. "Thank you," it whispered. A warm glow radiated from the crawlspace. You felt a gentle hand close around yours. Section 17. The rescue. With trembling hands, you pulled Evelyn from the shadows. A fragile, pale girl with eyes wide as the moon. She clung to you, whispering, "Thank you." Outside, dawn broke. The first sunlight in decades touched the house. You carried her into the new day. Section 18. Healing the house, the air lightened. The creaks turned to sighs of relief. You repaired the floorboards, sealed the cellar, and painted the walls. The house no longer groaned but whispered softly, a lullaby of peace. Section 19. New beginnings. Evelyn grew stronger, laughter filling the rooms once filled with silence. Neighbors returned, drawn by the light. You felt the house breathe, no longer a prison, but a home. Section 20. Forever watchful at night, you hear the soft creak of floorboards, but it is no longer a warning. It is a promise. Evelyn sleeps peacefully, and the house keeps its secrets, but now with love. Section 21. Echoes in the walls. Even though Evelyn was safe, the house still whispered. Sometimes, late at night, you could hear faint footsteps padding down the hallway or the soft murmur of voices long gone. But now, the sounds felt less threatening, more like echoes of memories clinging to the walls. One evening, while sitting in the living room, you heard a gentle voice call your name. "Is someone there?" you asked, your voice barely above a whisper. A soft laugh answered, and the faint image of a little girl appeared by the window, Evelyn's silhouette from years past. "Don't be afraid," she said, smiling. "I'm here with you." Section 22. The lost locket. While cleaning the attic, you found a dusty wooden box hidden beneath old blankets. Inside lay a delicate silver locket engraved with the name Evelyn. You opened it carefully, revealing a tiny portrait of a smiling woman, Evelyn's mother. A chill ran down your spine as you felt a presence behind you. "Keep this safe," whispered a voice. "It holds the key." Section 23. Secrets unearthed. Determined to understand the locket's significance, you researched Evelyn's family further. You discovered that the locket was rumored to protect its bearer from darkness, a talisman against the shadow man who once haunted the house. Late at night, you heard soft footsteps again, but this time, they weren't threatening. They were protective. Section 24. A new threat. Just when you thought the house had finally found peace, a new shadow crept through the night. Windows rattled violently during a storm, and the temperature dropped drastically. The voice beneath the floorboards returned, but this time it was different. Angry, desperate. "They're coming," it warned. "You can't save her alone." Section 25. Gathering strength, you reached out to the town historian, a woman versed in local legends and old magic. She handed you a book bound in worn leather. "To protect the house," she said, "you must understand its history and honor its past." Together, you prepared rituals to strengthen the protective light around the house. Section 26. The ritual of light under a blood-red moon. You lit candles around the house, chanting ancient words from the book. The air hummed with energy as the walls glowed faintly silver. Outside, the wind howled and shadows writhed, but the house held firm, a beacon against the dark. Section 27. The Shadow Man's return despite the ritual. The Shadow Man returned, more powerful, more furious. He appeared in the hallway, a swirling mass of smoke and malice. "You cannot banish me," he snarled. "This house belongs to the darkness." You stood firm, clutching the silver locket. Section 28. Light versus darkness. The locket blazed with brilliant light, cutting through the Shadow Man's form. He screamed, recoiling into the corners of the house, trying to escape. You felt the house itself join the fight, beams creaking as if flexing in resistance. Section 29. The final stand in the basement. Where the shadows were thickest, you faced the Shadow Man one last time. With Evelyn's hand in yours and the locket glowing bright, you spoke words of power and love. The Shadow Man dissolved into mist, leaving behind only silence. Section 30. Peace restored the house side in relief. The shadows receded. The voice beneath the floorboards became a gentle lullaby, and the darkness lifted. For the first time in decades, the house was truly at peace. Section 31. A new dawn. The morning sun spilled through cracked window panes, painting golden streaks across the worn wooden floor. For the first time in what felt like forever, the house seemed less a prison and more a sanctuary. The air was lighter, less heavy with sorrow. You moved slowly, savoring the stillness. Evelyn's spirit lingered near, no longer a ghostly figure but something warmer, almost alive. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice like the rustle of autumn leaves. You smiled, feeling the strange bond that tied you to this place deepen. Whatever darkness had been here was gone, or so you hoped. Section 32. Unseen footsteps. Days passed, but the house was not silent. Soft footsteps echoed down the hallway, this time more like a child's playful patter. At night, you heard laughter, faint and bright, weaving through the shadows like music. One evening, you followed the sound to the back porch, where moonlight bathed the overgrown garden. "Come play with me," a voice called, but this time, it was filled with joy, not menace. You hesitated, then stepped outside, feeling the cool grass beneath your feet. Section 33. The garden's secret. The garden was wild and tangled, but hidden beneath the weeds, you found a small, weathered stone statue of a girl holding a lantern. Carved into the base was a single word, "Remember." You knelt and brushed the dirt away, heart pounding. This was no ordinary garden. It was a memory garden, a place where the past bloomed in shadows and whispers. The statue's lantern seemed to flicker faintly, casting dancing lights across the night. Section 34. Letters from the past. Back inside, you discovered a bundle of letters tucked into an old drawer. Written in faded ink, they were from Evelyn's mother, addressed to her daughter. "My dearest Evelyn," one letter began, "if you ever find these, know that I loved you beyond words." The letter spoke of hope, fear, and a desperate attempt to protect her child from the darkness that haunted their home. Tears blurred your vision as you realized the depth of a mother's love stretching across time. Section 35. Night whispers. That night, the house felt alive with voices. Whispered stories drifted from the walls, tales of love, loss, and courage. You lay awake, listening to the voices blend into a lullaby. A voice near your ear said softly, "You saved us." Warmth flooded your chest, and for the first time, the house felt truly like home. Section 36. The visitor. A knock on the door startled you the next morning. You opened it to find an elderly man with kind eyes. "I used to live here," he said. "Your name's been in the papers. Thought I'd come see for myself." He introduced himself as Thomas, a former neighbor who had known Evelyn's family. Over tea, he shared stories of the house, the laughter that once filled it, and the shadows that eventually crept in. Section 37. The hidden room guided by Thomas's memories, you explored the house's forgotten corners. Behind a bookshelf, you found a narrow door leading to a hidden room. Inside were dusty toys, faded photographs, and a small bed, Evelyn's childhood sanctuary. The room pulsed with a bittersweet energy, a shrine to a lost childhood trapped in time. Section 38. Shadows stirring despite the warmth of new memories, shadows still lurked at the edges. One night, you caught a glimpse of dark shapes moving just beyond the window. The air chilled again, and the house creaked in warning. You clutched the locket tightly, ready to face whatever darkness might return. Section 39. A warning in the wind, a fierce storm swept through the night, wind howling like the cries of the lost. Amid the tempest, a voice whispered on the wind, "Beware the coming night." The house trembled, and you realized that though the worst had passed, darkness had not fully relinquished its grip. You steeled yourself, the fight was not yet over. Section 40. Preparing for battle determined, you gathered candles, salt, and the ancient book once more. With Thomas and Margaret by your side, you planned defenses, wards to repel the shadows and protect the light. Together, you felt the strength of shared hope, a fortress of will to guard the house and the souls within. Section 41. The gathering storm, the night was thick with tension. Outside, thunder rolled like the drums of an ancient war, and lightning cast fleeting shadows across the walls. Inside, the air crackled with anticipation. Margaret laid out protective symbols along the floor while Thomas recited old incantations from memory. You held the silver locket, feeling its warmth pulse against your palm. Evelyn's presence hovered nearby, steady and bright. "Whatever comes, we stand together," you said, voice firm despite the tremor in your heart. Section 42. The first strike at exactly 3:11 a.m. The house shuddered violently. The Shadow Man surged through walls and floors, a tempest of darkness and rage. Candles flared, wards glowed, and the symbols blazed with light. "Back! Leave this place!" Margaret shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. The Shadow Man hissed and lunged, but the combined strength of the wards and your resolve forced him to retreat, shrieking in fury. Section 43. The heart of darkness, you knew the Shadow Man's strength came from the basement, the deepest root of the house's curse. Together, you descended into the cold, damp darkness. The walls seemed to close in, whispering secrets and threats. In the center of the basement, a dark pit yawned, a wound in the earth that pulsed with evil. Evelyn stepped forward, lantern in hand, her face serene yet resolute. Section 44. The final confrontation. As you approached the pit, the Shadow Man emerged, a swirling mass of despair and malice. "You cannot end me," he growled, but you stood firm, lifting the locket high. "Light conquers darkness," you said. The locket blazed with brilliant silver light, flooding the basement, and the Shadow Man screamed as the darkness unraveled. Section 45. Light restored, the pit sealed itself with glowing stone, and the house sighed in relief. Shadows receded, replaced by warm, golden light. Evelyn smiled, her spirit finally free. "Thank you," she whispered, fading like dawn breaking through night. You felt a peace deeper than you'd ever known, as if the house had healed with her release. Section 46. New beginnings. Sunlight flooded the rooms, and birds sang outside. The house was no longer a place of dread, but a home filled with memories, both old and new. You walked through the garden, now blooming with wildflowers and life. Though the past lingered, it no longer held you captive. Section 47. A visit from the past. One afternoon, a young woman appeared at the door, Evelyn's granddaughter, drawn by stories and the promise of closure. Her eyes filled with tears as she embraced you. "This house held my family's secrets," she said softly. "Thank you for freeing us." Together, you shared stories and laughter, bridging generations with hope. Section 48. The house's whisper. Late at night, the house seemed to hum softly, a gentle song of healing and remembrance. You sat by the fire, the silver locket resting on your chest. A soft breeze brushed past, carrying a faint whisper. Home. You smiled, finally understanding. Section 49. The legacy the house stood strong, a guardian of stories and spirits. You vowed to protect it and honor the memories etched into its walls. And as night fell, you felt the house's heartbeat. Steady, strong, alive. Section 50. The voice beneath the floorboards. Finally silent, the creaks and whispers faded into silence. The voice beneath the floorboards was gone, replaced by peace. You closed your eyes, letting the quiet wash over you. At last you were home.